6 Native Americans rescued an alien who revealed that his craft had been brought down by enemies amid a celestial conflict in the sky above. Out of reverence, they addressed him as the Star Elder, but his real name was Bekti. Using a small crystal that projected images, the Star Elder revealed the history of the solar system and humanity to the group of 6 rescuers. One of these rescuers happened to be the grandfather of Robert Morning Sky, who subsequently transcribed the experiences witnessed by his grandfather into a book titled The Terra Papers. This video will provide an overview of the content presented in the aforementioned book, shedding light on our history. The galaxy we inhabit is referred to as Eridanus. Over time, the process of evolution gave rise to intelligent life spanning various star systems, resulting in a diverse array of humanoid races, including insects, fish, reptiles, birds, mammals, and more. Advancements in technology facilitated expansion beyond native planets, leading to interactions that encompassed both trade and conflict with other humanoid civilizations. Within the expanse of Eridanus, a formidable empire emerged known as the Empire of S-Beings. This title derives from their reptilian humanoid characteristics and distinctive hissing speech. The primary objective of this empire is to establish dominance over the 9th sector, an area encompassing our solar system and Earth. Referred to as Este, this empire operates under the leadership of the Ass Queens. Renowned for their unyielding efficiency, proficiency in cruelty, shrewd political maneuvering, and strategic leadership, the Ass Queens command warriors with dragon-like countenances and imposing stature. The inhabitants of this empire are identified as Aryans or Orions. Over the course of time, another influential race rapidly expanded its influence. These are the RRRR, which evolved from predatory mammals and gained notoriety for consuming the flesh of their foes. Referred to as Asa, overlords, by others, their realms came to be known as Asar. Their warrior ranks were divided into Iku and Bay, representing aerial and ground forces respectively. Driven by the pursuit of war and colonization, they developed gargantuan warships comparable in size to a planet. With superior weaponry, they seized control of the 9th passageway, a pivotal star route facilitating access to and departure from the Orion Empire. The Orion Empire extended an offer of alliance to Asar. The term stipulated that in exchange for their allegiance, Asar would gain dominion over the outer stars of the 9th sector. This pact was duly accepted, leading to the establishment of their principal base centered around Sirius, Sirius, and they became known as the Sirians. Everything remained tranquil until the reign of the Sirian monarch, Great Anan. Beside him stood his younger brother, faithfully serving him. However, a decisive juncture emerged when Anan was summoned to take command amidst a galactic great war that entangled both empires in conflict against a common adversary. In this critical moment, his brother seized the opportunity to mastermind a successful coup, wrest control of the forces, and ultimately assassinate Anan. As he ascended to power, he called himself King LL. Meanwhile, Anan's son was apprehended and subsequently exiled. Anan's grandson, Prince Anu, now found himself in the service of the newly declared sovereign. At this time, a new star on the cusp of maturation gained the attention of King LL as a potentially untapped resource. A master of Genesis science was sent there with the objective to colonize and cultivate this primordial star system. In its early stages, the fledgling sun was accompanied solely by 2 neighboring planets, the modest orb known today as Mercury and the larger celestial entity, Tiamat. While subsequent planets would eventually take form, it was upon Tiamat that the Genesis scientist initially embarked. Following extensive cultivation, Tiamat adopted the designation Eridu, signifying the mastered place. The Genesis scientist was conferred with the prestigious title Enki, denoting Lord of the World in the likeness of Asar. However, mirroring the deposition of Anan by King LL, another pivotal juncture unfolded during LL's absence from his royal abode. Anu joined forces with advocates of Anan and launched a triumphant overthrow of LL's reign. Consequently, LL was compelled to seek refuge in Eridu, where he would establish his new rule. Meanwhile, Anu ascended to the throne in Sirius. Given the opulence of resources within Eridu, the Orion Queens interceded, advocating for both factions to embrace a truce. As a result, King Anu conceded to receiving resources from Eridu on behalf of the Sirius and Orion empires. In anticipation of a potential opening to depose LL, Anu deployed his elite star pilots, renowned as Ikiki, also referred to as the Watchers, to the solar system. King Anu entrusted his son, the designated heir, Prince Anan, with oversight of the Ikiki. He was named Enlil, Lord of Command. Simultaneously, Anu positioned his other son, Prince Ea, an accomplished Genesis scientist, into the role of Enki, previously held by the inaugural Genesis scientist. Notably, despite Prince Ea being older, the throne eluded him due to the fact that Prince Anan was the offspring of Anu's union with his half-sister, a crucial condition for Asar's succession. Both princes established their bases on Tiamat, with Enlil commanding the skies and Enki nurturing the development of the system's worlds. King Ll had a grandson, who came to be known as Ikumarba, signifying the Great One of the Akikian Bay, as well as Zul, a title reserved for only the most esteemed of warriors, denoting one who is supreme master. To avert his ascension to power, King Anu summoned him back to serve as his cupbearer, thereby keeping him under constant surveillance, echoing the precautions that King Ll had taken against Anu years earlier. Coinciding with this, both sons of King Anu grew progressively discontented, as each of them wanted sole dominion over the entire solar system. In a bid to placate them, King Anu journeyed to Eridu accompanied by Ikumarba, to forestall any coup attempts to engage with his sons. During this visit, Ikumarba expressed a desire to meet his relatives, a wish King Anu acceded to. Upon their reunion, both sons of King Anu asserted their claim to total control. Failing to reach a compromise, they resorted to drawing lots, resulting in Enlil emerging victorious and assuming the role of Lord of Eridu, while Ea was relegated to the position of Enki. As King Anu was returning to his flagship, he found out that Ikumarba had seized command of it. He narrowly managed to escape back to Sirius. With the warship under his command, Ikumarba swiftly established dominion over the solar system with minimal resistance. Ikumarba came to be acknowledged as Lord Arzu, also addressed as Zuzu or Zuz, Zeus. The name of the palace underwent alteration to Alambuzu, meaning Olympus or the place of gathering of El and Zu. Anu's two sons eluded capture. Upon their return to Sirius, King Anu marshaled his forces for an assault on Eridu against Arzu. When the opposing factions clashed, Arzu's warship met its demise and the debris collided with Uranus, resulting in a shift in the planet's axis. Similarly, Anu's warship was destroyed, and it ended up striking Tiamat. As a tribute to those fallen in the conflict, Arzu erected a memorial named Alalu, Valhalla. The intervention of the Orion queens occurred once more, emphasizing that the turmoil had led to immense destruction in Tiamat and that hostilities between the warring sides must cease immediately. This ceasefire held until the emergence of a new foreign power, prompting Anu to persuade the Orion queens that Arzu might align with an external force instead of their empire. Consequently, forces were dispatched from both empires under the guise of a diplomatic mission. By the time Arzu realized the ruse, it was already too late. He was captured and transported back to Sirius, while all his loyal adherents met their fate through execution. By this juncture, both the biosphere and civilization within Tiamat had been utterly obliterated. The responsibility of revitalizing Tiamat fell to Prince Ea, along with his volunteer crew known as the Anunnaki. The initial objective was to construct an operational base. It was during this phase that they uncovered the chaotic state of the planet's energy lines resulting from the Great Collision. In order to establish a stable power source, a convergence point of 6 energy lines was identified as the site for an energy house. Crystals were strategically placed within it to harness the energies required to power their equipment. This energy house also encompassed a reanimation center for recuperative purposes. Its construction featured 4 triangular reflective surfaces, aiding in aerial orientation of spacecraft. The toil was demanding for the Anunnaki, and complaints were rife. Gradually, stability was attained, leading to the mining of gold and other valuable resources that were subsequently sent back to Sirius. Thus, Tiamat was reborn. In commemoration, Eridu was renamed Eridu, signifying the enslaved place. This name eventually became Perth. Prince Ea invested considerable time in manipulating and engineering various types of plant and animal lifeforms, albeit at the expense of his administrative responsibilities. Simultaneously, Anu harbored concerns that Enlil's return to Sirius might pose a threat to him. Consequently, Anu designated Enlil to oversee administrative duties within Eridu, granting Ea the liberty to continue his Genesis work. This decision ignited Ea's fury. He departed Eridu, venturing to a remote locale to establish a new agricultural biological center, joined by his sister, Princess Ninhursag, who also possessed expertise as a Genesis scientist. Princess Ninhursag would eventually create a hybrid that would irrevocably alter the destiny of Eridu and its Sirian dominators. In the interim, Prince Enlil assumed control over mining operations, yielding increased resource production, albeit at the expense of overworking the Anunnaki. In response, the Anunnaki initiated a strike. In the face of potential retribution, a faction of the Anunnaki launched an assault on Enlil's palace. Appealing to Anu, they implored him to journey to Eridu to negotiate Enlil's removal. Concurrently, Enlil himself sought to return to Sirius, while Ea sought to reclaim his position. Seizing upon this opportunity, Ea, alongside his sister Ninhursag, proposed a resolution. They had successfully amalgamated the bloodlines of the Sirians with the indigenous creatures of Eridu. The resultant hybrids acquired a measure of intelligence and were amenable to commands. For instance, they engineered Henti, a lizard hybrid, Semter, a creature bearing qualities of both horse and Sirian, Mentor, a creature blending bull and Sirian attributes. To address the current challenge, they intended to take the Appa, a jungle creature, and genetically modify it into a mine laborer. Despite EA's intervention, Anu concluded the assembly by decreeing that Enlil would retain his rule over Eridu. The hybrid creature, now named Adapa, was successfully engineered. These entities were assigned to toil in the mines, under Enlil's strict directive that their labor be grueling and that they receive no treatment for injuries due to their expendable status, leading to numerous fatalities, something that deeply appalled EA. Seeking retribution, EA approached the Adapa inhabitants at the agricultural center within Eridu. Originally subject to controlled breeding programs and supervised sexual activities, EA now introduced them to the concept of unrestricted sexual activity. Word of this development swiftly reached Enlil, evoking his fury. He promptly gathered the offending Adapa and expelled them from the agricultural center. Consequently, two distinct groups of creatures emerged, the Adapa loyal to Enlil, and the Adamas, with Muse denoting monsters, considered unfaithful and denied assistance. EA and his sister Ninhursag embarked on a mission to teach survival skills to the castaways, hoping that his creations could eventually forge lives of liberation. The more intelligent individuals assumed roles as educators, earning the title Su, meaning those that know, and instructed in Iasu, or the way of EA. A subsequent figure known as the Teacher of Righteousness would be called Yesu, Jesus, a variation of Iasu. Anticipating the imminent arrival of the Sirian ship of state to Eridu, Enlil aimed to guide the ship toward the poles. The strong gravitational field there would trigger the melting of glaciers, instigating a necessary environmental transformation and ending the Ice Age. However, this action would result in a massive flood that would endanger the Adamas population. Enlil warned EA that any effort to warn the Adamas would be perceived as aiding the enemy of the state, thus considered a crime. Yet EA managed to rescue a portion of the Adamas by sheltering some underground and positioning others atop mountains. Additionally, he constructed a cargo ship capable of transporting some to safety. Subsequent to the flood, Enlil and EA confronted each other and reached a truce agreement. Both vowed to no longer intervene in the other's domain. EA committed to assisting in the refinement of better prototypes and hybrids, while Enlil agreed not to interfere with the Adamas. This accord eventually gave rise to two distinct groups of creatures. Those affiliated with Enlil were notably intelligent yet servile, whereas those associated with EA displayed heightened sexual drive and creativity in music and arts. Notably, the latter group received a DNA modification for passion from a faction of Genesis masters referred to as the Aku, who belonged to a bird-like humanoid species. This event came to be known as the Gift of the Feather. The descendants of both Enlil and EA ultimately engaged in conflicts against each other, with the Adamas intricately involved as pawns in the game. Among these descendants was Prince Marduk, EA's son, who would later be accused of his own brother Dumutsi's murder, leading him to flee Eridu. Marduk formed alliances with a rebellious faction known as Esta, the Underground Ones. These reptilian beings sought refuge within the extensive caverns of the Orion Empire, aiming to undermine the authority of both the Orion and Sirian empires. Conquering Eridu would weaken the Orion Queens and provide control over the Ninth Passageway, compelling the Queens to enter negotiations. Successfully convincing the lizard hybrids, particularly the Henti, who held influential positions within Enlil's system, Esta led a rebellion and seized control over Eridu. This war of takeover resulted in Marduk's triumph, as he ascended to the new position of Lord over Eridu. Enlil managed to escape back to Sirius, while Ea guided many of his followers to Baliadius, Pleiades, signifying the place of Baal, Lord, Ea-Da, the creator. Following Marduk's rise to power, historical records underwent alterations to portray him as the creator of the universe, subsequently renowned as the sun god Ra. To solidify this narrative, Esta harnessed their mind control abilities, constructing chambers to manipulate memories among Eridu's inhabitants. They also erected electronic towers to establish an electrical barrier, thwarting communication with external forces. The teachings of Ea were demonized. He became known as Dalebeel, signifying, Creator Ea, the Diabolic One. Not long after, even Ra was deposed, and control shifted to the reptilian beings known as Shet, the very Greys familiar to us. Over the past 4,000 years, they have maintained dominion over humanity, exerting control from the shadows, under the guise of the Illuminati.